It is officially winter. My kids just went back to school, and I'm already scared of all the sicknesses that they're going to come home with. I'm preparing myself both mentally and getting the proper supplies.
In our house, it's always about the dry air. And I haven't always had the best luck with using a humidifier. But I got to tell you, this Vicks humidifier is amazing. It is so easy to use. And I love that it has Vicks VapoSteam and pads that you can use to give you that. I love the smell. I can't help it, guys. I love the smell of the menthol and the medicated mist to help with that dry congestion. Oh,
it's good. It just feels invigorating. It feels invigorating.
It does.
You can find the Vicks Cool Relief along with VapoSteam and a variety of VapoPads on Amazon. There's a special offer on Amazon on the Vicks Cool Relief Humidifier where you can get 20% off your purchase. Just go to Amazon.com and search Vicks VUL 600 Cool Relief Humidifier. It has a blue tank with white in the center. Be sure to click the coupon to get the discount. You need this wintertime comfort.
I kept saying to myself, motherhood's hard. Maybe when they said it was hard, they just meant that you feel this way and maybe the rest of my life is feeling this way. But also, when my baby came out, I expected to love him so madly. I expected they would put him on my body and it would be this instantaneous thing that would click in my brain. And when they put him on, I felt nothing. And I hated myself for that. I thought, you absolute failure.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by the lovely Brie Tucker.
Yo, yo, yo. What's up? What's up? I'm trying something different.
That's a new one. Yeah,
I'm trying something different. It's a new year. It's a new tagline for Brie. So let's see what I can do in 2025.
There you go. New year, new tagline. Are you going to keep, so any Hoosier?
Probably. That's like a Midwest thing. That's like the y'all and all of that. Like, it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, we'll segue. We'll segue.
We'll get on our little segues and turn.
Because now we're going to talk about postpartum depression, which is a totally different topic. I don't know why it's the worst segue in the entire world that we just did.
It works. We were
It's
just
okay.
on our little segues and we just imagine it's Paul Blart on his little segue and we're turning. And then now we're moving into the episode.
It's all good. We have a wonderful guest for you today. Her name is Sarah Hoover, and she's the author of The Motherload, which releases today. I have it in front of me. And she holds a master's degree in cultural theory from Columbia and a BA in art history from NYU. Her writing has been featured in Mother Tongue, The Strategist, and Vogue. The memoir focuses on Sarah's understanding of her postpartum depression and how she was able to persevere and eventually give birth to a second child. And it's all set against the backdrop of one of my favorite cities in the world, New York City, and a little bit in LA as well, another one of my favorite cities. So we hope you enjoy our interview with Sarah. You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah. I'm so excited to have you here and with us.
I'm so happy to be here, but I'm embarrassed because I didn't know I needed a tagline.
You needed a tagline? Oh, we can help you.
I messed up. And that one was so good. That was a really good performance. And by the way, I am a Hoosier. So even your backup tagline really spoke to me.
I love it.
As soon as I said Eddie Hoosier, I'm like, wait, Sarah's from Indiana. But
That's
guys,
right.
So podcast listeners out there, we actually record the introduction with Sarah watching. But I'm not supposed to mention Sarah until after we introduce her. So anyways, Sarah, I'm excited to talk about this book because first of all, it is such a joy to read. It is completely like, it brings you into another world. Like I could be there with you while you're experiencing these things. I mean, you're such a gifted writer. So you out there in podcast land listening right now, go and grab this book and you'll see also why, because we're going to dig into a little bit of Sarah's story here. Because Sarah, you grew up in Indiana and you moved to New York City. So first of all, I kind of want to know, like, what was the reasoning behind moving from the Midwest to the city?
I loved growing up in Indiana. It was totally magical. And I, lived there in the 90s and I didn't have cell phones and all the stuff people have now. And so it was just like truly a magical place to grow up among the cornfields. But I think I studied dance, and as a kid, as most, little girls do, I took ballet, but I got really into it. And I did a summer camp one year and I saw a ballet by a company that's based in New York, and the ballet was about New York City. And it like blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, I have to live in the place where people make art like this. I have to see what those people are like. I have to know. And so it kind of planted a seed. And then I knew I wanted to study art history. I took an art history class in high school, and I absolutely loved it. My grandfather would take me to the museum in Indianapolis every weekend. And there's no better place in America to study art history than in New York. So I kind of was like, all right, I'll apply to colleges in New York and see if I get in. I mean, what no one told me is how lonely and cold and miserable those first years would be in New York City without my mom and my friends from Indiana, because I kind of went alone. I didn't have, a lot of my friends stayed in Indiana and went to state school or went to other schools in the Midwest. And I was very lonely for a long time in New York, and it was really hard. But I've lived here now longer than I lived in Indiana. It's like, I've been here my whole life. And after I went to college here, I was like, started working in the art world, which is really centered in New York. So it had its hooks in me by then, But I love Indiana. Every time I go back, I'm like, oh my God, so you're telling me you just put all your stuff in the car and then you drive it around? Like, what a delight. That's so easy. Yeah.
Wait, you're telling me that there's grass and you guys
amazing. You see nature. Yeah, it's incredible. It's a special place. But yeah, so I started working in the gallery world, and I worked at an amazing art gallery, a big international art gallery, starting actually while I was still in graduate school. And I stayed there until I sold my book. Like, it was the only job I ever really had in New York as an adult. Wow. And I loved it, but I was like at one place for 13 years, and then I sold my book, and I never even thought of myself as a writer. Like, I wrote academic stuff, for school, that kind of thing. I wrote press releases when I worked in the gallery, that kind of thing. But I had never thought I was worth telling my own story, and I couldn't help it. I just started writing, and I was like, I have no idea. I mean, your compliments are so kind, and I appreciate them so much.
Well, you have such an interesting story too. Like, it's so interesting because like Brie and I were talking about it, and Brie was like, she's basically like Charlotte in Sex and the City, working in this art gallery. So what I found so interesting was you were there in the art gallery, and then all of a sudden a call came in from one of these artists you really, really revered. Tell us about that call.
Okay. It was in my first days of work, and this artist called to speak to someone else at the gallery. He did not call to talk to me. Okay. I just was the person picking up the phones. Yeah, to be clear. And I just immediately heard something in his voice where I was like, oh my God, this man sounds so special. He sounds so warm and kind and so interesting. And he was kind of like the type of person that you're right, that I really revered, because he had dedicated his whole life to making art and to the ideals of the art world. And that was so mythical to me, And I had actually studied his work in art history in school, and I had seen it in museums, and I remembered seeing it, and I remembered showing it to my mom at one point. And so I thought I was like the coolest person in the world, that I was talking to this guy in real life, right? And yeah, then I married him. I was like, you're stuck with me now, buddy.
Wait, just for the listeners, if you have a little bit of whiplash, that's because we did just jump from the first time they spoke to now they're married.
Yeah. Sorry, I fast forwarded slightly.
No, sorry. Like, honestly, the meat and the potatoes are after the being married part, because I love how your book, I just 100% can understand where you were at, what you were going through. And it was just, it's amazing.
Thank you. I will say, like, you called me interesting, and that's really nice. But I think every single person on this planet has their own interesting story. It's about figuring out how to tell it. Like, you guys have your art, which is your podcast. Mine is writing, but telling your own truth is the most freeing and interesting thing anyone can do. And you just have to like figure out which way you're going to do that, what works for you, So like, I don't know if I'm a good writer, but I know that I wrote something that is me. And like, I hope that people can connect with that.
Yes. And like going back to the part where you met your now husband, and has been your husband for a long time. You had been on so many bad dates in New York City, and you had expected this first date with your husband at Balthazar, which was so funny because I was just in New York City and like somebody was talking about Balthazar, and then I read it in your book and I'm like, oh, coincidence. The time that you were at the restaurant with him and he didn't have his credit card, was it?
Oh, he forgot his wallet.
Yes.
Sir,
tell us this story and like how you expected it to end and then what actually happened at the end.
Okay, so I could not have afforded to go to a restaurant like Balthazar on my own. Like I had been there when my parents visited New York, and it's really a special restaurant, and it's been in Soho, which is the neighborhood where I live, since the 90s, and it's beautiful inside and you feel like you're in France, right? So it's like a treat to go there. And I was so excited. I was like going with this person that I really admired and thought was so cool. And we walk in, and of course he like knows the hostess, and they escort us to like the perfect table. And I'm like, oh my God, like, am I important? And I'm like, you order, like, I don't know what to get. And he like gets us steaks and all this stuff and all this expensive stuff. And then he's like, actually, I forgot my wallet.
Wait, was that before or after you guys ordered? I'm just curious when that forgot part comes.
It was when the bill came. It was like way after we ordered. Like we were we shut the place down. Like we were talking and like ordering more drinks and like having one of those first dates where you're like, everything else disappears and it's just the two of you and you're like, oh my God, is this guy the one? Like either he's going to ghost me and it's going to be horrible, or like we're getting married and having 2 kids. Okay. Worked out okay in the end.
Check.
But I was like, you did what? Like there's no way that I could, like my my debit card would have gotten declined. And also I was like, well, I guess he doesn't really like care about this. I know, it just seemed so unprepared to me. I was like, it was the equivalent of being late or something. And I sort of was like, is he trying to like get me? Obviously, I didn't think he was freeloading, but he was like, my studio where I make my art is just a couple blocks away. Do you want to come there with me and I'll get my credit card and we can come back? And I was like, oh my God, he's like every other gross guy in the city. He's trying to get me to go home with him.
You're like, it doesn't need to be this
First
elaborate.
of all, you didn't have to ask twice. Like I probably would have done it anyway. Exactly. I was like, great strategy.
Yeah.
And he really didn't. And I had like an emergency credit card in the back of my wallet for, if I had an emergency in the emergency room, that like my dad paid the bill and I had never put anything on it. Like I had to like take the sticker off, and I was like, I guess I'll pay.
Oh, okay.
And, as I don't know how much I should tell because it's in the book, but he made it up.
He did. It was such a good little like, I don't know. It was like, oh my gosh, he does really care. And he is like the one. It's that kind of ending.
This is a hard interview because it's like, there's so much we want to talk about, but we can't give away the whole book.
We can't give away the whole book, but we have to hear more of the story. So right after this, I want to hear about when you guys decided to have kids and what your initial thoughts of motherhood were. We're going to get into that right after this.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.
When it comes to raising kids, there's so much to consider. Things like, what do we feed them? When do we feed them? How do they sleep? What does it look like to raise kind kids? How does their nervous system work? How do I keep myself calm? What are my triggers? There's so much that comes into play, and we are distilling all of that information for you at Voices of Your Village podcast, where we bring experts in the field of early childhood and education and psychology and across the board so that you don't have to comb the internet for information. instead, you get to show up and hang out and have shame-free, judgment-free conversations and insights into what it looks like to raise kind, empathetic, emotionally intelligent humans. I'm Alyssa Blask Campbell. I have a master's degree in early childhood education. I'm a mom of 2, and I am walking this journey right alongside you doing this work. Come hang out with me at Voices of Your Village, and we can dive into real conversations with actionable tips.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
So Sarah, now you're married with your husband in your story timeline. And since this book is a memoir, I think it's so good to tell people like kind of like the progression about what they can expect in your book. When did you guys first have these discussions about kids? And like, what did you expect it would be like?
Okay. I have to say, like, I wasn't one of those girls who always wanted to be a mom.
Yeah, same.
I wasn't like, God, I love kids. And I meet women like that. And I'm like, that's so cool that you like genuinely, this is your passion. It was never my passion.
No, you've met the two of us as well. Both of us were like, not going to have kids.
I had to be convinced actually by my husband to have kids. So
I totally understand that. Like, it just didn't feel supernatural to me. I didn't believe I had maternal instincts. Like, it wasn't. I'm one of 3 children. I love my siblings. I'm very close with my parents. I loved family. But, you know, when you're in your 20s, like your life seems so long. And I had no vision for myself as some mother with 5 kids or something like that. Like, it just didn't occur to me. I was not really like running towards family life. But my husband is older than I am. And he was always like, having kids is the greatest creative act you could possibly do. And he's an artist.
Speaking as an artist.
Yeah, I was like speaking as an artist, but also, by the way, speaking as a man. I was like, easy for you to say.
Exactly. I'm like, first of all, here's a statement that I'm going to give you that comes along with a hefty spoonful of guilt and self-loathing because he's telling you it's the greatest gift. And but like you said, easy for you to say, you're not the one carrying it. It's not a
well, what's hilarious is that men describe this life that they'll come home from work and there'll be like a few kids running around and like dinner will be there. I'm sorry, who's made that all happen? Who's made it all happen?
Yeah, and the kids will toddle up to you and say, "I love you, Daddy." No, that does not just naturally happen. That doesn't.
No, and by the way, in my family growing up, my dad came home from work every night at 7. My mom had dinner ready and I ran up to my dad and told him how much I loved him. And like, that was my life. But what he didn't see, I'm sure, was like the inner turmoil of a woman, my mother, who wanted to have her own identity and also wanted a family and was probably, I always think she probably had her own version of postpartum depression with her kids that she didn't know how to articulate in the 80s and 90s, that there weren't words for. Because I'm like, how do you do this otherwise? Like, I always say postpartum depression is a rational response to a completely insane thing that we are asked to do. You grow a baby, you birth a baby, your entire life changes, and you watch your husband walk gracefully off back to his normal life like nothing ever changed.
Exactly.
And you have all this added responsibility. I'm like, there is wonder and magic that comes with it, but it's not as simple as to say it's all wonder and magic. It's not. It's complex. You give up a lot, and your identity that you built your whole life around gets ripped from you very, very quickly, right? I didn't know any of that, but I didn't think to myself, you have to be a mother. It's the most important thing in the world. But then I got pregnant. Like, just out of, I wasn't trying. I got pregnant, and it also wasn't an option in my mind to not have the baby. Like, I was maybe 30. I was married. I had a job. He had a job. So like, yeah, it seemed like the natural next step. But I definitely didn't have some calling to be a mother. And the transition to it was really, it rocked me. It really rocked me.
No, I could totally relate to that. Like, it rocked me too. I remember looking, my daughter's now almost 16 next month. But I remember looking at her and I'm like, okay, just 18 more years, just 18 more years, just 18 more years. And now that I'm there at like almost the 18 years part, I'm like, I made it. But I mean, like, it's not anything like I even regret that, which is why, like, when you say it's such a rational response to something insane that we're expected to do, I mean, yes, it totally is.
Thank you for giving the words that, like, I know I thought and had like no way to express. Was just like, how am I the only person that feels like this?
Yeah.
It's so lonely. Doesn't it feel so lonely?
It feels so
lonely.
Yeah.
That's like why I wrote this book, basically, because I had never written anything. I don't know if I'm a good writer, but I knew that if I felt that lonely, then there were other women who felt lonely too. And I was like, I have to write this. I have to, if there's one person on this planet who feels less lonely because of it, it will be worth it. And it like came out of me like I was puking because it just felt so necessary and urgent that people feel less lonely. That transition it makes you you're just by yourself in it. You're just alone in it. And I think like you have old enough kids that I see on the internet now, Chrissy Teigen and, you know, Amy Schumer and whoever that are really talking about motherhood. But like even 8 years ago, 5 years ago, the conversation was so different, you know? And so what you guys are doing is obviously like, you know, you're cultural leaders in this space, but I can imagine when you were really, when you're kids, you are, it's so important. I mean, this is how you get rid of a glass ceiling. You talk about all of the ins and outs of what it means for women to have these different parts of their lives. I mean, I don't think that men are emotionally capable of feeling what we feel and doing what we do every day. So like, thank God that we're having babies.
I think they are emotionally capable, but we have had that put on us for our entire lives, that emotional labor. Just being raised as a girl, we were told to talk it out with our friends. We were told to share our feelings. Men were not. They are not trained as well as we are in the fields of like emotional labor. We take it.
We're conditioned.
All on.
Okay.
Yes, conditioned.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing to explain to a guy too, that like this is what it feels like to take all this on.
And I think that's true. And I think there's also the piece too that we're not given any grace with it. As women, this is an expectation that we do this. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me say this. If a mom were to leave her role as a parent, leave her family, how would she be judged versus a dad that decided to leave his family? I think that in most cases, a woman is judged much more harshly.
Of course.
Right? For saying, no, I'm not taking on this role. I'm not saying that, you know, we don't see both as, you know, kind of the wrong choice in quotations, but women, you get no slack on it. There's no slack. You do this job and you do it well.
Well, I think
you suck.
There is the expectation that to be a good woman, you naturally love motherhood. And if you don't love every aspect of it, you are bad at being a woman.
Yeah.
And I deny that. I think that everything is complicated, motherhood included. And I don't think this expectation of perfection is fair. It is part of this glass ceiling that denies us real equality. Like, you're allowed to have complicated feelings about something. Just because you have a uterus doesn't mean that you have to do this or that you're bad if it's not totally easy for you.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to have complicated feelings about it.
Absolutely. So right after this, Sarah, I want to get into how you finally realized that something was wrong, that you had these feelings. And we'll be back right after this.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
Hey friends, if you're facing divorce, thinking about it, or navigating the chaos it can bring, I've got something just for you. I'm Kate Anthony, and I host the New York Times recommended The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, your one-stop resource for surviving and thriving through divorce. Each week, we dive into everything from emotional healing and co-parenting to legal strategies and starting over. You'll hear from top experts, powerful guest stories, and maybe a little tough love along the way. Because divorce, it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. This isn't just about getting through it. It's about rebuilding and reclaiming your life on the other side. Whether you're in the middle of a messy split or planning your next chapter, I've got your back. So hit that follow button and join me on the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, because survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it. And anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
So, Sarah, you had all these complicated feelings about motherhood, as both I had, as both Bree had. I mean, I'm there looking at my kid being like, there's only 18 more years of this. I could do this way. When did you realize that these feelings you were having, they weren't necessarily helping you out, or they were something different than what other people were experiencing with kids?
That was really hard because I kept saying to myself, on the one hand, everyone tells you motherhood's hard, right? So I kept saying, well, maybe this is what they meant. Maybe when they said it was hard, they just meant that that you feel this way, and maybe the rest of my life is feeling this way. And I couldn't reconcile that because I was like, that's not fair. Yeah. I have to feel like this forever. And all I did was try and perpetuate our species and like be a good woman. Like, what have I done to deserve this? You know? So there was that. But also, when my baby came out, I expected to love him so madly. I expected they would put him on my body and it would be this instantaneous thing that would click in my brain, and I would adore him and want nothing more than to mother him. And when they put him on my body, I felt nothing. I did not feel love. I did not feel recognition, not a spark of joy. And I hated myself for that. I thought, you absolute failure. And I didn't question it because I just thought that I was bad at being a mom. But then the months went by and it didn't get better. And I felt totally shut down. And I remember I was, I went on a roller coaster ride, as you read in my book, an emotional roller coaster. But at maybe 11, 12 months after my son was born, I remember sitting at my kitchen table, looking out the window. And I live on the fourth floor of a building or whatever, and thinking, what if I just walked off the ledge? And I thought to myself, thank God I thought this. That's not normal. That's not a normal way to think. I don't know if it's postpartum depression. I have no idea what this is, but that's not normal, and you have to call somebody. And I the next day called the therapist and was like, I couldn't come totally clean. I wasn't ready yet. I was too ashamed, but I was like, something's not right, was about all I could say.
Yeah.
And it was only once I could talk to a professional that I started feeling like there was maybe a way out of this. And now, like, I had another baby. I found total happiness I found delight in motherhood, and I never thought I would. But I had to like get to a place myself where I was like, whoa, something is really wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you described right there, like I've had those thoughts, and it took a therapist to actually name those thoughts for me, because it's suicidal ideation. And it's not a normal thought, and it's thoughts that could be taken away with treatment as well, which also I didn't realize during my depression and anxiety. So I'm glad that you found help with that. And just to know that I was right there with you too. I thought that something was wrong with me, or I didn't think something was wrong enough with me, to get help.
Totally.
Like you weren't bad enough to be worthy of help.
Well, no, it's like, again, like it's like the bad feelings, like, because when I had these thoughts, it was, what if my car just crashes and it's all over? It wasn't making a plan or anything like that. And so you're like, oh, I'm not bad, not realizing that is this kind of warning sign that you really need to go get some help.
And when you look back at that time, are you like, poor me, I can't believe I felt so down.
Oh yeah.
In
I'm
the
like
moment,
near tears right now.
You're like, it's okay, I'm still okay. But yeah, when you think back, you're like, how did I do it? For months, feeling that aloneness, I would think to myself, I would go to a party or I would go out for a drink with a girlfriend and I would have fun. So I would say to myself, well, you can't be depressed. You had fun last night. You went on a date with your husband and you enjoyed yourself. So therefore you can't be depressed. But the lows were just so low. It's not that there were no highs. I got out of bed every day. I took care of my kid. I did, I had a job, but the lows were unbearably low. And I would like fixate on death. I could not stop thinking about losing my mother or losing someone important to me. And I would just like cry in the shower endlessly because of it. And of course I think about those things all the time and I feel, they make me sad, but it was sadness I couldn't get over on my own. I would cry for 3 straight hours.
It's the overwhelming feeling of it all. That's
okay. Because my first one was a eventful pregnancy. I had placenta previa, so I was hospitalized for a lot of it. But my point is so nothing went to plan. So I was already coming in because remember, don't move my cheese brie. I don't like it when plans don't go the way they're supposed to. But then he was in the NICU, and then when he got home, which wasn't a long NICU stay, I remember just laying in bed next to him and next to my son, and trying to breastfeed him was such a struggle. And just not wanting to get up. And I remember this probably happened for like a day or two. And on the second day, my then husband came in and his parents were visiting us. And he just leaned down and he's like, if you don't get up, I'm going to take him and I'm going to go send him off with my parents. And then I'm calling the doctor. And and he thought that was motivation to get me up. And it did. Oh, it got me up. And then I just never said another word the rest of the time. I was just like, okay, I just have to get through this.
God forbid I meet this man in a bar sometime.
But yeah, right? Like, and so him saying that to me made me go, oh God, maybe I am making this a bigger deal than it should be. Maybe I just need to put on my big girl panties, which are literally big girl panties because I had a C-section, so I had my diapers.
Literally big panties. Yes.
I know, right? So it's like, do I just need to like put on a brave face? Like, because you tell yourself, like you just said, we all said the same thing in our heads at some point. Well, we're not that bad. I can get up.
Totally.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
But it's not.
I mean, I am mad at your husband for how he spoke to you. I'm mad at him.
Don't worry.
I am mad perpetually at that man.
Oh, I am sure there's a list. But I will say, like, I don't mean to absolve him or any man of anything. But in a way, it's not totally their fault because we don't complain enough. They don't know what it's really like. They don't understand because for so long, women have been so good at being polite and following all the cultural conditioning that we were talking about. And we don't say, this sucks, like, please help, And so I think I'm sure he thought he was doing the right thing or whatever, or maybe he's a horrible ass jerk and didn't think he was doing the right thing. But in any case, all I'm trying to say is this is, again, why the work that you're doing is so important.
We need to speak up. Yeah.
We have to talk about this stuff. If most of the people in the world making decisions about our bodies and, most politicians are men, they have to know the reality of what we're going through in order to help us with policies that, are beneficial towards mothers and women. And they have to be able to have access to real life stories. so that they can really deeply understand what it's like to go through this incredible journey that allows the human species to be on our planet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But like, it's complicated. I don't know. I mean, I think that tough love doesn't work. Like,
no.
You needed a hug. You probably needed to like talk through stuff with someone
Right?
and feel heard and tell your birth story and like.
But we didn't know that.
It's interesting because I was listening to another podcast, Armchair Expert, which I love, and they were interviewing Cynthia Revivo, and her mother is like kind of like a postpartum doula. And this is something that happens like all the time in Britain and England, like other countries, where a woman comes into the house who is trained on how to care for newborns, how to care for the mother, especially. And could you imagine if after like your first child was born, you just had another woman there who was caring for you and helping you care for the newborn as well, instead of like putting pressure on you, just like making sure you're okay, making sure you're mentally okay. Oh my gosh, what a life changer that would be.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I would pay more taxes if everyone did that would just be
totally.
Like, imagine someone, if even just the act of someone being like, how was your birth? Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, was your C-section scary? I'd love to hear about it. And I'd love to, like, if you have questions about the baby, I'd love to because weren't you so scared when you got the baby home from the hospital?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I couldn't sleep. I thought like my baby would die or stop breathing.
Of course. I mean, the fear level, it is so much mentally and physically is a whole other story. And it's not easy for anyone. I don't care how easy your birth is. I don't care if you have a baby that sleeps through the nights on day one. It's still this massive adjustment. And you need a community or at least one person to talk you through it. Otherwise, I think it's very natural to be depressed. Like, I wasn't depressed because I was flawed. I was depressed because I was, I felt things that I think are very valid.
Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for people who think that they might be experiencing postpartum depression?
This is so important. I mean, I think if you suspect that something isn't quite right, then it probably really isn't. It's probably, you're going to look back, just like the three of us have done, and say, wow, it was 10 times worse than I thought. But you kind of only see that in retrospect. So if you have even a little suspicion, it's easy to say, get a therapist. I know that's not an option for everyone, but you have to tell someone and you have to make the decision. I'm not going to be embarrassed by this. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to feel like I'm bad. I'm just going to be honest. Look, motherhood's hard, but you shouldn't be miserable. You shouldn't be unable to claw your way out of sadness. And if you feel even a smidgen of that, you got to ask for help. And also, you are allowed to complain. Complain all you want. I think it's helpful. Okay. I'm no doctor, but I think that there's something really valid about it because it helps you put words to how you're feeling and sort of practice explaining how you're feeling. And then when you have a real opportunity to get help or you're in front of a therapist or whatever, you can like articulate what's wrong. Mm-hmm. It took me so long to even know the words to explain what was wrong. I was just stuck in this, kind of prison of my own feelings. And I couldn't even articulate it to someone. Yeah. And that makes you feel alone too. And then it's like this horrible snowball.
It is horrible. Like, I love that thing about complaining because I see like so much stuff on social media about, I never complain. I'm always happy about everything around me. Look at my beautiful family. And I'm like, F you!
That is,
right?
Hashtag bless is a big spoonful of bullcrap.
Yes.
Agreed. I was just going to say, if I couldn't complain, I don't think I would have a personality at all. It's like, it's all I'm made up of.
Venting is a very important skill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, Sarah, what do you have coming up for you that's exciting right now?
Okay, well, today, the day of my book coming out, starts my book tour, which I'm so excited about because, like, I've been working on this thing for a couple of years, right? It takes a long time to write a book and publish a book, and to have it out in the world and to, like, engage with people who can relate to the experience or have their own version of the experience is going to be magic for me. I cannot wait to talk to women all around America, to the different cities, in the different cities that I'm going to, and like hear their versions of this story. And I think it will make me feel less alone. It feels really healing in a way.
Yeah.
And like I feel like everyone's going to do me this great service of telling me their stories too. And I just can't wait to connect with people about it. So I'm, starting on my tour and I'm going to a bunch of different places. And I'm like so literally honored to meet people who are willing to talk to me about this subject matter.
That is exciting. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story. And go out and get Sarah's book, The Motherload. It is out today. And Sarah will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun. You guys are the best.
So from this episode, Bree, Sarah talked a lot about complaining and venting. And that is something like I still have to really push myself to do, because that voice in my head is telling me, oh my gosh, like no one will like you if you complain. Everybody will leave you or think you're negative or whatever, because that's what I've been conditioned to believe. And I love how she describes complaining. You're allowed to complain. You're allowed to tell your story. You're allowed to say it's hard, because we don't give ourselves that permission enough, I feel.
Right. And I do think that if there is one thing that we talk about a lot here at No Gut Mom is the importance of having a community. And you can't find that community if you're not honest about where you're at. Because whatever community you find, it's not going to be the right fit. Right? Like, cause like if you go to those after you have your kids, you go to the mommy and me class and everybody's happy go lucky. And you're like, no, I'm sucking at this. You have to be able to be honest and open. And then trust me, those people that are like this, smiley and happy go lucky, they're going to be like, oh girl. Yeah. I feel that too.
I'll always like that, because one thing, so I don't like to complain, but I cannot not be honest. It is a huge part of my integrity. I cannot keep it in. I can't be fake. I have to say something, as you know. And
you're a horrible liar. And it's a good thing.
Horrible liar.
It's a good thing.
So like I go to like these parent breakfast mom meetups after like the first day of school, and I'm the one who brings the conversation from like, oh, it was so great weather, oh, did this, to hey guys, what do we think about reproductive rights and the ballot? I turn it immediately serious, because I can't stay in the that small talk level conversation. I hate the small talk. Oh my god, it drives me insane. I love Sarah's interview because I always feel bad for bringing the mood down, quote unquote, bring the mood down. But really what I'm doing is I'm giving a voice to other people, because from that one breakfast, I felt like no one agreed with me, because I was saying something for Chamber for Mothers and I was passing out the voting cards everywhere. And I'm like, here you go. Da, da, da. I felt no one agreed with me. And they were like, oh, silly Joanne. Oh, look at her. But I just got a message the other week from one of the moms who was there and be like, hey, I'm feeling really down and I wanted to know if you wanted to meet up for breakfast, based on the things like you were saying at the breakfast like months ago. She remembered it, and she knew I was someone that she could come to, and reminds me I need to reach out to her again, because I was traveling when she sent that and I said I'd get back to her. But that's besides the point.
No, I mean, it is works. It is. Complaining works. Like when you realize that, because her story is so powerful. I did try to write a book after I had my first kiddo. Like I have a very, very small half of one chapter written before I let it go. But I think it was the same motivation as Sarah. I had a weird pregnancy. And by weird, I just mean it wasn't your average pregnancy. I had things that I didn't know how to talk to people about. I was hospitalized for most of it, so I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. My point being is I read her book and I could not put it down, because I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt like I found, oh my God, there are other people that feel the way that I did. Like I didn't have to match her every experience and her every emotion to feel like she's my people. So you have to go and get Sarah's book. You have to go get The Motherload. It is so, so good.
Yes. We have a link for you right down there. And remember, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book, How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.